Hi everyone, and welcome to the last lecture for LING120. This is a lecture on real-life applications of regular expressions for April 20th. Before we get to that, I want to take just a second. Normally we would have a day where we spend, 15-20 minutes talking about the impact of language technology. This is for Chapter 8. I don't think Chapter 8 was really worth the read, so I think these questions kind of sum up the discussion from Chapter 8 or the important points for this course. So just some questions for you guys to think about. Are computers taking over our jobs, given how good of a job they do with handling language nowadays? So, like in the last lecture on machine translation, are they taking over the jobs of is machine translation taking over the jobs of translators? Or how about human editors? Are spell checkers and grammar checkers taking over those jobs? And chatbots taking over the jobs of people sitting behind a screen and chatting with somebody. I mean, all these different things. Are computers going to ever take over our jobs in these respects? So this isn't a yes or no question necessarily. It's just something to think about. I think, in my opinion, computers have come a long way, and there are certain things that they can do for us now, but there are many things that the computers are not yet capable of, and I'm not sure if they ever will be capable of completing to the same quality as a human can. So I don't know, just something for you guys to think about now that you know kind of how computers work with language and whether or not that's comparable to how humans work with language. Second, what kind of tasks are we or are we not comfortable carrying out with a computer rather than a human? So things like if you want to, if you have a question about maybe a health-related question, would you be comfortable talking to a computer about your symptoms and getting a diagnosis rather than talking to the actual doctor? Things like that. I mean, it's a valid question. Should we try to automate that type of thing? And whether or not we automate it depends on that answer. Do we want that kind of thing automated? And so, but then of course, there are things that are less, I don't know, pressing, like ordering a pizza online. Do you want the computer to be able to kind of converse with you and figure out what kind of pizza you want rather than having to call and talk to the human? Well, I sure do. I like that ability, but it's kind of a different scope than, or a different ball game with than something more, I don't know, more pressing like the health situation. So there are things that we are and are not comfortable carrying out with a computer, things that are more important that we really do want a human for. And so should we try to automate these types of things? Three, kind of a joke, will computers ever take over the world? These are things you see in movies. Hopefully now that you've seen kind of a taste of how computers work with language and how computers work in general, maybe you'll have a better idea of whether or not computers are going to ever be able to take over the world. I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on, like computers being able to automatically generate texts that, or texts of several paragraphs that look like they're written by a human. And so is that sort of thing scary or no? And so you can kind of form your own opinions there. And then finally, should we be concerned about privacy with the current state of language technology? Things like big companies having all of our language data. Is that something that you're concerned about? And you can do some Googling online and figure out. I mean, we've already talked about in class a little bit of what what kind of data Google has on us. Is that something you're comfortable with or not? And that kind of helps to determine whether or not you use their services, right? So things like this. Are you concerned about your privacy with the current state of language technology? And so knowing what we know now about computers and language from this course, you can help. This can help you to make a better, more well-informed decision about these kinds of questions. So again, these aren't like yes or no questions, just things to think about. So moving on, regular expressions. I guess I have it here in your linguistics classes, but it can be really in any area of life, anywhere we're using, or where you've got text on a computer that you want to work with. And so I'm going to walk you through how very concretely how you can use this for like linguistics majors in your linguistics classes, computer science majors in your computer science classes, whatever. give you some very concrete suggestions on what you can do. So Mac users, I'll have you go to this website and download BBEdit. It's the new form of what used to be, I think, Text Wrangler. Windows users, you can download Notepad++. And if anybody's using Linux, I don't know, maybe Notepad++ or something like that is similar, similarly available for Linux. So you can just Google simple text editor. And so I have BBEdit on my computer. Okay, so I have BBEdit, so here is a new file in BBEdit. You can just go to File and New Text Document, or Command-N, or Control-N for Windows, and I'll have you type in this string here. LING120 is at 12:10, I guess this was last semester. Now it's at 3:10 p.m., 3 days per week, right? And so we can maybe save this. Let's go ahead and save it real quick to the desktop. And we'll put test.txt, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the find function. So on Mac, this is Command F right there. On Windows, it will be something like Control F. And if you can't find it, you can just type in find and help, and you'll be able to find the command for that. And so here is where we'll be able to do some more advanced searches, right? So the important thing here is to have grep enabled. Grep is short for, I don't know what the G is for, but for regular expressions, basically. At least on this interface, grep means regular expressions. You might have a button that actually says regular expressions, something like that. Go ahead and make sure that that is clicked, and type in, I don't know, type in \D for digit, and click Find All. And sure enough, it's going to bring up all of the instances where, and you can kind of see down here, it's highlighting each of the digits. And so I've had 7 instances of the digits. So maybe I want to, like let's say I have a text and I want to, I don't know, delete every digit. So I can have the digit, replace it with nothing, or maybe I want to replace it with the letter D rather. I'll click Replace All, and sure enough, ling DDD for those digits at DDD PM, D days per week, right? And so, I mean, you can do really complex regular expressions in this interface. And honestly, this is where, between this and Regex101.com, I use this type of interface like most days to do regular expressions and to work with a bunch of different types of data. So what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to walk you through a couple of real-life tasks that I have actually worked on in my classes and in my research. And you'll have a little bit of assignments with this. So, and this will give you an idea of what kind of classes you could potentially use regular expressions in. So let's start out with, so I gave you guys access on Canvas. Where's that? Canvas, under LING120. I don't have time zone confusion. 120. So on Canvas, under, I think it's under PowerPoints is where I put it. Yeah, PowerPoints, regexapplications.zip. You go ahead and download that under PowerPoints, and that will give you this. And you'll have access to these 3 folders, CEO, MyCusp, and Thesis. I'll walk you through, let's walk through MyCusp first. So this is a project I'm actually working on right now for one of my graduate classes. And in this project, I am analyzing the data from the Michigan corpus of upper-level student papers. And so these are papers that were written by students at University of Michigan maybe, or something like that. And so what I found on this website was that, I mean, it's a freely available corpus, but unfortunately there's no way to just download the whole corpus. If you click download here, I was really hoping they would just give me all the data, all the maybe hundreds of thousands of words of data so I could work with it for my graduate class, but it doesn't, unfortunately. But what it does give me is, and I found this all just purely through trial and error, I found that it gives me all of the IDs of the papers, along with their titles, disciplines, types of papers, the student level, sex, nativeness, and textual features. And so what I also found, just again through searching through the website and trying to see if they had a way for me to download the data to work with it, is if you click on any one of these, you can click on here, and you'll notice that it takes you to this URL, mycusp.elicorporate.info, search, view, and then PID. You'll notice that this is very similar to this. Over here, these paper IDs. Paper ID, that's what this stands for in the URL. And so what you can do is grab any one of these, paste it in there, click go, and it takes you to the paper. So what I did, because I didn't have access to the corpus itself, I decided to essentially just download the corpus, which you need to be careful of, and I'm going to make sure that I want to state this very explicitly. You need to be careful with web scraping, because sometimes different websites and different corpora have regulations on what you're allowed to do in terms of web scraping their website automatically with programming. And so like here, I can see it, my cusp fair use statement. I'll click show. If I zoom in, the corpus files are freely available for study, research, and teaching, commercial purposes, which I'm not. I'm just using it for a class purpose, for a class paper. Then you have to obtain permission for commercial purposes. So things like that, beware before you do any web scraping. Make sure that you're within their policies. But I am, and so what I decided to do is I wrote this Python script. It's going to open up in a different IDE, which I don't want. Let's see, open it up in BB Edit. I'll get back to regular expressions here in just a second. But so basically what I did is I imported a couple libraries here, and then I had this list of IDs. And this is kind of similar to JavaScript lists a little bit, right? As you guys have learned on Free Code Camp. And so what I did is I just copied, actually, first I went into this list of IDs that I downloaded from the website, and I copied all of this. I went into BB Edit, open up a new file, paste, and I needed all this to be in kind of this format with quotation marks around each one with a comma. I could have just insert quote, comma, next line, insert quote, but that would have taken absolutely forever. There are 829 lines of this. I didn't want to do that. So what do? I go to find, and I say at the beginning of each line, I want you to add a quotation mark. Let's make sure that's a literal quotation mark. And then any number of characters, non-greedy until the, just until the end of the line. Of course, it should just be this. And then make a capture group here, capture everything in between, and I'll insert a quotation mark, and then \1 for the capture group here, and another quotation mark with a comma. And let's see if that works. Sure enough, here we go. I've got the quotation marks, the commas, and the only thing that it did wrong was added a quotation mark to the end of the last line, which I don't want. But otherwise, everything is perfect. Add this beginning bracket here, ending bracket there, and now I can copy and paste my Python file. So it saved me some time so I could do my programming faster. So now I've got a list of IDs, and I can go through each one and use programming to grab the URLs. So you'll remember that this is the URL to gain access to each of these files. I put in the ID. I'm going through the whole list and doing it, for each ID. Do this. I open it up and I grab it with a beautiful soup library, and then I go for each item in the page. So going through the HTML. So essentially going through. Let's see. Yeah, for each item on the page, I wanted it to do a quick regular expression. So let's actually, let me instead make IDs equal to, I'll just put 1 in here so that I can just show it for demonstration purposes. I'm going to comment this, comment that out, and then I'll quick run this, and it should, let's see, print text, or rather item, right? Print item, run, and it will run through and it will scrape that web page for me. It just takes a second, And so these are all the items. Timing of life course events is known to be da da da, and it goes through, and this is the whole text. And so let's see, somewhere down here towards the end, yeah, this last line, the Michigan corpus of upper level student papers MyCosp is owned by, we got this whole line, actually 2 lines here that are common to every single paper if you just look through them. And then I think there might be also the, let's see. Yeah, so somewhere in here there's also the references, which you could maybe get rid of. And to be honest, I don't remember what the task was, so you guys are going to get out of this task. I had a task for you, but I've forgotten it. There's something that I replaced here in the original version, but I can't recall what it was. So I was going to have you guys do a regular expression task here, but I've forgotten what it was. But basically, I just went through and I used regular expressions to clean out the individual lines that I don't care about. So like the line that starts with the Michigan corpus of, I literally just typed in a regular expression like the Michigan corpus of, and then any character, any number of them onwards. Take that and replace with nothing. And so I did this to clean up this corpus, and then I wrote them all to text files to be able to work with. So that ended up, so I had originally these HTML files, right, that I scraped automatically, which in text form look like this, which always have somewhere right in here, yeah, the Michigan corpus of upper level student papers. And so I have a whole bunch of these. I only have 6 for the example, but then in clean.py, I essentially just go through and actually there, exactly right there, you can see the Michigan corpus of period plus end of line. And so this is the regular expression that I used to clean out this corpus. So pretty simple process, a couple of really easy regular expressions, and I got a whole corpus of, what was it, 829 texts that I can work with and then do linguistic analysis with for a final paper for a course. So this is something that you guys can do as well. And as you saw, this Python file for scraping the web pages was really simple. Like this is pretty much all of it, 4 lines and a little bit of cleaning. So this is something you guys are very much capable of as well. So with that said, I'll get rid of this, get rid of this. BB Edit opens up, seems like everything in different files. Get rid of this one. So I had a task for you guys in there. I think I told you accidentally the answer. So we'll just, you don't have any task for MyCusp, but you guys can see the uses of regular expressions for very quickly and easily programmatically taking out data that you aren't interested in. So the next thing, another project that I'm working on right now is this project where I have a corpus of conference call transcripts from businesses that are going through some sort of a merging or an acquisition event. And I have, I think, 300 some texts, and they look like this. They're in HTML, so they're web pages, and so they've got like these merger and acquisition call transcript. And what I'm interested in here is, if we look at the top, we've got Chief Executive Officer is one of the executives on the conference call. And so in this one, her name is Lynn Fuller. So what I'm interested in is everything that Lynn Fuller says, everything that the CEO says in these conference calls. And so Lynn Fuller, she's got a bunch of text here, then somebody else talks, then she comes back and says a paragraph. And so it goes back and forth like this. There's also a question and answer session where she occasionally makes these comments or gives these answers. And so I just want the stuff that she says, the stuff that the CEO says. Unfortunately, these 300 conference calls are very much not standardized, and I only want the language from the CEO, and so in some of them it's very clearly labeled CEO, which is great. I can automatically grab those with regular expressions. This one, it says CEO. It's in a in abbreviated form. So I've got the name here. I can do the same thing there. Here I've got, actually, looks like one CEO here. I think he's just the one CEO. So this one's not, oh, nope, there's another one, Chief Executive Officer. So I've got issues where I've got two CEOs on the same call, and it's because, well, yeah, I don't know why it is, but so I have to figure out how to deal with that in regular expression. How can I grab all the data from the CEOs when there's multiple of them? In this file, I've got this CEO and this CEO. So again, I have two of them there. And then in this one, I've actually got no CEOs. I just have one president. And so I have to figure out what to do there as well. So that's the raw data. And in the end, I'm ending up with something similar to this, where I have the file name and then the CEO's name. This I automatically extracted with regular expressions. Sometimes I did better than others. Sometimes the regular expression worked better than in other instances. So like in this one, I accidentally grabbed a colon. This one was good, these couple were good. This one I accidentally got the title as well. This one had an abbreviation. This one I manually entered CFO because actually there was nothing. My regular expression didn't catch anything. So I looked in the file manually and found that it's a CFO is the closest thing to a CEO in that file, and so I went with that one. These ones, clearly my regular expression did a bad job because it thinks that the CEO's name is Good Morning. So there are some improvements I need to make to my regular expression. So my task for you guys, if I can remember what the task is, I have, so this is my Python file for going through each of these files, each of these HTML files, and I want to get several things. I want to get the CEO's name, the company name, the conference name, the date, the CEO's speech, any questions, and any answers in the file. And so I'm using this just using a bunch of regular expressions. So my task for you is not to get the CEO data, because that is way too complex. I myself am struggling with it. So your task will be to get the conference name. So I have a, let's see, I have a function up here. Yeah, let me minimize some of these so it's easier to read and see. There we go. Okay, so conference name. So in these HTML files, maybe I can open one up in Chrome here. We get these conference call names. This is the, or actually rather, the conference call name is, I think, in the header. So if I view page source, I can look and see, let's see, where's the conference call name? No, I think this is the one. So it's that main title at the very top of the article. And so we see that it is inside of this H1 tag, this level 1 heading, H1. We see that it starts with H1, says headline, and then in between the tags it says Heartland Financials, da da da, and ends with /H1. And we see this is a similar structure. Right click, view page source, in all of them. Right, we see it here in the header, again right here, and then also similarly it's down here inside of a paragraph tag as well. And so your task, and it's the same in all of these, if you right click on the page and then view page source, your task will simply be to find that that headline, that conference name. And it's in the H1 tag. I've shown you exactly where it's at. It is this. So your whole task is, given this text, find this. Just find that H1 heading. And so you're going to use a regular expression to do that. Just, there's no replacing, just find. Just a find expression for find this H1 tag. Okay? And so, and you don't obviously need to understand the Python code or put it into the Python code. Just write a regular expression. You can maybe copy, go into regex101.com. Let's see if this text is too much for this website. Doesn't look like it, so. And maybe if I just search for H1, it'll process, and sure enough, I found 9 matches. There are a couple things up here that we don't want. There's another one we don't want, but then right here, this is what we're going to want. So yeah, just type in a regular expression that finds exactly this and nothing else, and then that's your task. So, and then that would, if you were doing this project like I am, then that would give you this column of data. And this one was fairly easy to grab with. It's very straightforward regular expression. So that's your task. So that's task number 1. My cusp task you don't have because I gave you the answer accidentally. The last task for this assignment, for this lecture, is part of my thesis, actually. So I'm going to open up this text file. I'll open it up in BB Edit. I will note first off that this is the exact same format as my real thesis data from real participants, except I did randomize. I gave random scores for everything, just to make absolutely sure that I'm not violating anything with what's the IRB, the International Review Board, something review board. So I've got some anonymized subject IDs. It doesn't reveal anything about the subjects, obviously, about the participants in my study. So what I've got here is I've got a column for the subject, for the participant, their random ID, and I've got the item, which in this case it's to surprise, here it's wedding anniversary, here it's to give a gift. So these are vocabulary items that I had participants, Spanish students, answer and translate. Then I have the score, which is these numbers over here, 0, 1, or 2. And then finally list type. It's either related or unrelated. And so I've got 6,223 lines of data here. This is all the data, obviously randomized for this task for you, but this is all the data for my thesis. And so your task, now I go back into the PowerPoint, you'll actually have 2 tasks. This one is an example, so I've already given you the answer to help you with the next task. So here, I've given you 2 lines of the data, of the 6,000 lines of data. Subject 102J1 underscore 1. The 102 is the name of the course. J is the name of the instructor. This 1 is the name of the section, and then an underscore, and then 1 is the name of the participant. And then item, you got the item, the score, and whether it's related or unrelated list. And so what I did, I needed to, actually this is the same line of data. I started out with this top one, and because of my statistical analyses, I needed it to be formatted in this way. So it's the exact same data. I just used a regular expression to change line 1 into line 2 using this find and replace regular expression. So here I looked for a new line and then subject underscore, just like right here. And then I've got some nested capture groups. Then \d, 3 of those, so 3 digits, 102. And then I've got this A through Z. I'm expecting a letter here. And then maybe one more digit, depending on whether or not the course, like Spanish 102, has multiple sections. So 0 or 1 of these digits. And then any number of characters until I find a tab. So that tab will occur right here. This is a tab. And so I wanted to find that and replace it with put the first capture group here. And so that's actually the whole thing. So if you'll notice that this subject 102J11 is the same in both of them because this whole regular expression is one giant capture group. So I replace it, I put it right back in. Then secondly, I type in course underscore third capture group. And so that's course underscore, this is the capture group from right here, 102, 102. And then I have a tab, section underscore, that's where you see here, section underscore. And then I have the second capture group, which captures J1, right, this A through Z 0, 1 digits. And so J1 here, J1 here, that's what that replaced. Another tab, instructor underscore, tab, instructor underscore. And then this J is capture group number 4, which is just the instructor initial, and then another tab. And then we're actually, the rest of it rather, right, the rest of it. So we have J and then item 2 surprise 0 unrelated. This is different. This should be a 1. I changed it. I shouldn't have. But otherwise, so I had this as the original data. I wanted it to be in this format, just reformat the exact same data. I just used a really complicated regular expression to do that for all 6,000 lines of code or of data rather than doing it by hand, because that would have been a nightmare. So just a regular expression, nothing else. One individual regular expression. So here's your task. That was an example. I want you to write a regular expression that can change this line of data into this line of data. And let's see. Yes. So you'll note here that the difference between these two slides is that this one says 202 underscore and then the participant ID, and then whereas the slide above has 102 an initial and a number underscore the ID. So between these two slides, the main difference is whether or not there's an instructor initial and whether or not there is this section number. And so what I want you to do is, because Spanish 202 only had one instructor during the semester I collected data, so write a regular expression, write one singular regular expression that can change this line of data into this line of data. Exact same thing, just change it. And you can do this using regex101.com. You can borrow the regular expression that I have here. This would be your find, this would be your replace. You can copy and paste that in. You'll need to use money signs for each of these capture group. Instead of \1, \3, you use money signs, like we've been doing in class. But otherwise, note that the subject ID 1 here can vary from 1 to 20, so include that in your regular expression. And that is all. Yeah, the instructor's initial fake here of E was the only instructor of the 202 class, and so that's how you know what to put there. Change this line into this line with one regular expression, one or more regular expressions, and you can borrow my regular expression from the last slide. Last one. So that was task 3 or task 2, I think. This is your last task. So the other final thing is, in my thesis data, as I told you before, I had scores of 0, 1, and 2. And you saw those in those 6,000 lines of data. There are scores of 0, 1, and 2. I needed to change this for my statistical analyses so that all the 1s became 2s. I didn't want to, for various reasons, I needed to make all the 1s into 2s. Yeah, I could have done this in Excel, copy and paste into an Excel sheet and save it as a file, and then go through, find all the 1s and change them to 2s with Excel's find and replace. Or I was already in BB-Edit doing all these other regular expression tasks, and so I could just add one more regular expression really fast. Literally took me like 2 seconds, and I can do it instead of having to mess around with Excel for a while. So write a regular expression that can find, I have these dots here. This is the previous data, and then a tab, and then some sort of a digit, 0, 1, or 2, and a tab, and then more data. So tab, digit, tab, \t, digit, \t. Find all the digits. Anytime that there is a 1, change it into a 0. I think I said 2 earlier. Change it into a 0. And that's all. Find all the 1s, change them into 0s. You don't want to just literally find digit 1. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about here. You don't want to just find all the 1s, change them into 2s, or into 0s rather, because that will also mess with things like the course name, and so you don't want to do that. Make sure you only get it for this context, for the score, right? And I said that had to do with the tabs. So, in sum, my cusp, that was just an example. You had a task, but I gave you the answer, so you don't have to do that task. In the CEO data, look through these HTML files and figure out a way to write a regular expression that catches the H1, the level 1 heading of the conference call. I want the conference calls to be found. So write one regular expression to find that. And again, it's in here with my really bad Python code task here. You can write a Regex expression to find those, and you can copy and paste into regex101.com to help you. And then finally, in my thesis data, I've explained, I give you an example task with an example Regex expression, one kind of complicated task here, and then one pretty easy task. So you have 3 tasks in total. So that's all for today. I hope that you guys have learned something about Regex expressions, and I hope that this lecture has shown that Regex expressions really are useful. I use them just absolutely all the time to work with different types of data. And so whether you're a linguistics major or a software engineering major, whatever it is, if you have lots of data for something and you don't want to go through it manually and change stuff, you can just write a Regex expression to do it all for you in 5 seconds. So with that, have fun with those tasks. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to help via email. And yeah, that actually concludes the course. So good luck on your final exams. Thanks for a great semester. I hope you've learned something about computers and language, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you ever have a question or just want to chat. So with that, good luck on finals.